Hello, welcome to the Seamus Evans Show. Today I want to talk about ADHD. I have been researching ADHD for quite some time. As a professional speaker, I share my journey of living with Tourette's, ADHD, failing school, blah, 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 and how I had to learn to redirect my tics to be a television presenter. I started my career as a TV presenter when I was 18, and I had to learn how to redirect my tics. And when I started working for myself, I really needed to kick my own butt into gear and be able to sit down at the computer and finish the email. Either finish reading it or writing it, an important email, without getting up to look who the dog is barking at, or without having to get up and get a drink, or without having to get up and check what's in the fridge or do a loop around the kitchen, whatever it was. I was so like, Seamus, you really need to be able to focus here, man. Your career, your life, your job, your prosperity, the mark you want to make in the world, you want to be somebody, you need to be able to finish this email. I was about 31. This is about 4 or 5 years ago. And so I was like, you know what? I'll take drugs. I'll take ADHD meds. And I said to my mum, I was living at home at the time. What a catch. 30, unemployed, living with my parents. Things have changed. I said to my mum, hey, where's my ADHD diagnosis? Because I'm going to go get some Ritalin. Mum said, you never got diagnosed. I was like, what? How did I get diagnosed with Tourette syndrome and not ADHD? Because all the research will indicate that comorbidities live together. So it's never just one diagnosis. It'll never just be ADHD. It'll never just be Tourette's. It'll never just be autism. It'll never just be OCD. They're typically always coupled with something else, with another condition. I don't like that word, comorbidities. It sounds like a horror movie, but that's the scientific term. So then, as an adult, I was like, all right, well, I want to get these meds because I want to be able to concentrate and be like out of that movie Limitless with Bradley Cooper. So I went to a doctor. I got referred to a psychiatrist, not a psychologist. Only psychiatrists can give diagnosis and give out the drugs. And I went 3 times. Really milked me for every dollar I had. Cost a lot of money, but she was very thorough. And she gave me the diagnosis of ADHD. She also prescribed me Vyvanse. Vyvanse is another drug used to treat ADHD symptoms. It's long-lasting, not short-active. Ritalin is short. Ritalin is only about 6 hours, whereas Vyvanse is 8. And supposedly, at the time, Vyvanse was the best drug for it. My psychiatrist also told me that there are typically 5 career paths that people with ADHD commonly gravitate towards. And these are CEOs. These are high-flying CEOs of a successful company working, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, high-end, high performance. Then there's entrepreneurs, which, flipping businesses, they're successful, they're fast-moving, they buy and sell, they're doing quite well on that entrepreneur lifestyle. Then you've got professional sports stars, Formula One drivers, soccer stars, MMA fighters, whatever, sports stars. Then you have professional criminals in organized crime, starting out on the street, stealing cars, dealing drugs, then moving up a notch and, really getting into the organized crime. Then drug addicts, just full-blown addicted, alcoholics, drug addicts. And she highlighted to me that there's a common factor between those 5. Dopamine, high risk, high reward, impulsive. In order to be any of those and good at it, you must take risks. You must seek the high risk, high reward. It requires a lot of dopamine. You get addicted to the dopamine and a lot of impulse because that's risk taking. It also requires hyperfocus, your ability to hyperfocus. And when you get into that hyperfocus state, man, it is like a drug. You get into another dimension and you are just on. And there's no better feeling when you are just, whether it's reading, researching, I remember when I was in radio, when I was operating the desk, I was never the best at operating the desk, but I would hyper-focus on it. And when the timing was right, everything was perfect. It would sail like a ship, fly like a plane. Like it was really, really good and you'd get a kick out of it. Or when you're researching something that you're interested in, you can't put it down. I remember I read a book in a week. Now, I'm not a very strong reader. I started reading late in life, and even still to this day, I struggle. I've got a lot of books to read list. But when it's something you're passionate about, you can't put it down. And you would hyper-focus, and you would over-research, over-analyze. Which begs the question, okay, how do we then harness these individuals who are capable of so much greatness? How do we harness them and put them into channeling their energy and their efforts, their hyper-focus, their impulse, their risk, their dopamine seeking into something beneficial? The magic $1 million question. So I got on Ritalin, and to be honest, I didn't like it. I was on it for about 6 months. I got on Vivance and Ritalin. I got both. I experimented with both of them, and to tell you the truth, I didn't like them. It made me stop talking. It turned me into a mute. I'm a professional speaker, so it just didn't work. The other thing is, to sum up ADHD, and I'll tell you the exact definition of what ADHD actually means. And I'm going to unpack so much about this because this is a really complex condition, these are complex brains. This is a complex subject, but I'm going to try and sum it up and regurgitate the information in layman's terms because that's how I understand it. So the actual definition of ADHD is, there you go, that's one of my tics, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. When people think hyperactive, they think this is a hyperactive kid, he must have ADHD. There's actually an opposite. So there's hyperactive, which is physically hyperactive. Lots of energy, can't sit still. Then there's the opposite of hyper and hypo. Hyper is up, hypo is low, which is funny because here in Australia, we give people nicknames if they're hyperactive. We say, oh, look at this guy, he's hypo. That actually means the opposite to hyperactive, and it's hypo. Let me get this up. Hypoactivity and hypoarousal or low activation in certain brain regions, especially the prefrontal cortex. So it's opposite. I think I have both. I'm sometimes very hyperactive and sometimes I'm incredibly hypo, whatever that, I don't even remember what the word is that I read out. I'm definitely both. I have both. I know some people who are full on the hyperactive and I know some people who are full on the hypo, lower energy, and it's more internal, can't get out of bed, this kind of thing. Constant brain fog. Yesterday was a brain fog day for me. I woke up and I felt like I got hit by a train all day. And it's so frustrating when you get into those, because I like to be productive. I get a dopamine kick when I'm productive and when I tick things off the list and I'm achieving things. I love it. It's great, but I couldn't do it. And I did my best not to beat myself up. So to explain what ADHD is and the reason why we get distracted. So one of the symptoms of ADHD is your inability to focus. So here's how I'm going to sum it up. When information hits your brain at point A, it travels down a path to get to point B. And at point B is where the brain absorbs the information. So it hits point A, then has to travel down a little path to get to point B. And we only absorb the information at point B. The path that the brain uses to travel is slow. That is slow. So the rest of our brain gets distracted. The medication speeds that pathway up. So the information hits point A and travels at a normal speed to point B. Therefore, we don't get distracted in the middle of conversations because that pathway has been sped up. It's like if you look at a highway and there's traffic or an accident, they reduce the highway speed from 100 to 40. Everyone's going slowly. But drugs bring the brain back up to 100 at the highway speed. That's a very simple layman's term to explain why the drugs work to people with ADHD. It is speed. It's a narcotic. It's an amphetamine. It speeds your brain up at the right dosage. You overdo it, and it's very common for people to abuse the medication. And so in some cases, a non-stim drug, like a non-stim medication, might work best for the person who is overindulging. Instead of taking one Ritalin a day, they crush it up and snort 4 of them, okay? Not talking from personal experience. So I've been doing a lot of research. I've got a keynote coming up where I've got to talk to educators, teachers, on how different brains create deeper bonds. So the concept of a teacher out proudly showing their neurodiversity and showing their background and being proud of it to the students can actually create a positive reaction in the students, and the students will be like, hey, that teacher's got just what I have, so I'm going to be proud of it. And then they step up and really embrace and accept their diagnosis, because for a very long time, in fact, so many people still to this day, they're embarrassed because they feel something's wrong with them when someone gives you a label. You've got this. Oh, and it's an instant reaction. You can feel really insecure about it. I remember there was a time when I got diagnosed with Tourette's. I definitely felt weird about it. I didn't like it. First of all, Tourette's, everyone's like, what's that? And then you got to explain it. And then people ask questions about it. And you don't necessarily want that to be the reason you're the center of attention when you're growing up, when you're trying to discover who you are, when you're trying to create your identity, or you've got a passion or a hobby or whatever it might be. And you're like, stop talking to me about that. I like G.I. Joes. I like soccer. I like movies. Like, talk to me about something I'm passionate about, not this thing that makes me different to everyone. And I've spoken in hundreds of schools across the country. And I have learnt from my observations in talking to the different socioeconomic backgrounds in these schools. Everybody is the same, in that they're different, pretending to be the same. Now, that's a little bit of a confusing sentence. Everyone is the same. We've all got the same emotions. We're all made of the same stuff. We've all got the same background and upbringing. It's different, obviously, but we've all got something and we all carry it as individuals. But we're all pretending to fit in with one another, and we're pretending to be similar. So we're pretending to be someone else. I just remember specifically, there was a week I was in Sydney and I was talking to a school with very low socioeconomic background, students who were rough as guts. I saw them fighting in the lunchtime. They were swearing at each other. They were vaping in the toilets. You know, these were street kids, basically. Lucky, like, it would be lucky to have them at school if they would even turn up. This is the kind of school I'm talking about. Very rough. The next day, I spoke at the most expensive school in Australia. The most prestigious, most expensive, high-end. This is where all the prime ministers went as kids. Like, this is a powerful school. They were the same. The kids were the same. I don't mean misbehaving. They weren't really misbehaving. In fact, the difference I found is the students at the rough school, they paid attention. And the students at the rich school, they didn't. I found that fascinating. They were quite rude. I actually found them to be rude, and they didn't appreciate having a guest speaker. Not that I say I should be appreciated, and I can win over every crowd. That was one of the hardest crowds. I don't know what it was. The only thing I can put it down to is they didn't care. I guess because they get so many privileges and opportunities and get given so many things, this was just another thing. Whereas the rough school would never get public speakers. They would never get people visiting that school. So not only was it a once off, but they were very appreciative once I spoke to them and hit the core of human beings and emotions and trauma and what we experience. And I was quite confident in sharing my vulnerabilities. You could hear a pin drop. Whereas the private school, the rich school, that was a struggle. But what I observed is that they both had insecurities. They were both the same. They experienced the same emotions. Very different backgrounds, and their experiences would differ, but the emotions were the same. So, for example, just say the rough school, dad's in prison, mum's got a string of different boyfriends, and maybe the boyfriends would beat up or abuse the student. That's a hard time. That's a rough time, okay? And that student doesn't feel heard, and that student is feeling lost and is insecure, of course, putting up a tough shell. Then you've got the rich background. Let's say the parents completely ignore them. They're at boarding school. They never see their parents. They don't feel heard or seen, and they're frustrated, vying for dad's attention or mum's attention. Same emotion, same feeling, different background, different experiences result in the same feeling. And then what I noticed is that because everybody's got these specific experiences that make you who you are, we all tend to get a little bit insecure about our own experiences, background, upbringing, diagnosis, whatever it might be. So we project this sense of, oh, I'm actually like this because I want to fit in. Oh, this is how I behave. And we put on a mask. We put something in front of us to try and be accepted from others. That's what I noticed. It was the same behavior. Everyone behaved the same. And I realized we're all just the same. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what your background. It doesn't matter what ethnicity, what financial background, whatever it is, what privilege, what underprivilege. We are all made of the same stuff. Which brings me to my flat earth theory of ADHD and neurodiversity. I'm of the belief, and now the reason why I say this is a flat earth theory is because it's not true, okay? Scientifically, it's not the case. But it's so much easier to look at everybody through this lens. So there's neurotypical and neurodivergent. I believe there's no such thing as neurotypical. ADHD, autism, OCD, Tourette's, these are all a combination of symptoms. Now, here in Australia, we are actually expanding the symptoms, and we're including a lot of other symptoms now because there's been a significant uprise in diagnosis and people coming to the doctor and coming to specialists and coming to psychiatrists to get a diagnosis. And I'll get to reason why in a moment. But because of that, they're starting to see a lot of diversity in the condition. So in order to be determined with ADHD, now it's a little bit wider, which means it fits more people in. So I don't believe there is such thing as neurotypical. Because it's a combination of symptoms, and now those symptoms are growing, and the DSM-5, I believe it's called here in Australia, are expanding what symptoms are included into the diagnosis, then more combinations are coming in. So if everybody has some symptoms, and you've got your own combination of different symptoms, then your combination just doesn't have a name. But ADHD has a name. And that combination of symptoms has a name. The combination of Tourette's symptoms has a name. And the large spectrum of autism and the combination of those spectrum diagnosis condition, they have a name. But you might have some symptoms of ADHD, some symptoms of OCD, some symptoms, but you don't fall into any category. So it's so much easier to just look at everybody as no such thing as neurotypical. Everyone's got a little bit of something. I like to look at it like a cocktail. You've got a vodka sunrise, you've got an espresso martini, you've got a dirty martini, a dry martini. They've all got vodka, but they're completely different drinks. And that's the way I look at it. And it's just so much easier to look at it that way. They have done scans of the brain which show that there's a difference. There is an actual physical difference of brains between people who have ADHD and people who don't. So that's hard scientific evidence that, yes, there seems to be such thing as neurotypical, but it's a lot easier to just think there isn't. And I think it makes, if you fall into the category where you've got some symptoms of this, some symptoms of that, it makes it easier to accept it yeah, you've just got symptoms and that's how your brain works. Because I feel like a lot of people look at ADHD like a disability or a mental health. It's really not. It's just how your brain operates. So let's go a little bit deeper. There's a lot of contention and this is a bit of a controversial statement because no one likes to be told you've got a traumatic past, but the symptoms of ADHD and the symptoms of trauma are the same. So when I was diagnosed, my psychiatrist asked me to get all of my report cards from grade 1 all the way through to grade 12. And she told me, I'm looking for consistency. I want to see the comments from the teachers for every year. And they were the same. The comments were along the lines of, Seamus is intelligent, he just doesn't apply himself. He's very social and can get distracted. It was the same from grade 1 to all the way through to grade 12. And she was looking for an inconsistency. So for example, if it was grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it said Seamus is highly attentive, doing really well in school, applies himself, and very social. And then in grade 6, it completely changed and then went to Seamus is inattentive, he doesn't apply himself. Then the psychiatrist goes, well, what happened at that age? Why is there a shift? Maybe there was a divorce in the family. Maybe I was abused. Maybe there was a car accident. Maybe whatever it might have been, which triggered trauma. Trauma is fight or flight. Okay? So when it comes to ADHD and you're in a conversation or you're being taught in classroom and you don't want to be there, you don't like it, you're not engaged, what do? You can't fight, so your brain disappears. You can't fight the teacher and you can't walk out of the classroom, so mentally you check out. So obviously, no one wants to be told, it's not ADHD, it's just trauma. Could you imagine how the parents would respond to that? But we're fantastic parents. There's no way anything bad has happened to my little Jimmy. So that's an interesting factor. So let's unpack why there's a new diagnosis of ADHD, autism and ADHD, which that's not new. That's just what the uprise on social media has started to coin. Or I've got ADHD. That's a very common diagnosis. Remember, I said they're always coupled with something, two comorbidities, or it's autism with a comorbidity of ADHD, or it's predominantly ADHD and you're low on the spectrum of autism. But the combination of ADHD and autism is very common. That's because there's only a handful of combinations you can really have. So I don't believe there's more. I just believe they've finally put a name to it. Remember, the combination of symptoms has a name. The combination of symptoms of ADHD has a name. The combination of symptoms of Tourette's has a name. So more combinations are being added to the list. Therefore, more names are popping up. So let's unpack, why is there an uprise of diagnosis of ADHD? Because the statistics are there where I will run through, I've put together a bit of a page and I'm going to run through here some of the, okay, 1 in 10 kids have ADHD and 1 in 20 adults. Now, when I last checked, which was probably 3 years ago, it was 1 in 20. So it's now gone down to 1 in 10 kids. 1 in 100 Tourette's, 1 in 200, 1 in 100 kids have Tourette's and 1 in 200 adults have Tourette's. With autism, it's 1 in 91 people have autism. So that is 1 in 32 under the age of 25. So under the age of 25, 1 in every 32 people have autism. And then over the age of 25, 1 in 333. And then 1 in 50 with OCD. Why? Why is this happening? And I get asked this question a lot. I do a presentation for teachers and parents called Naughty or Neurodiverse, and I get teachers and I invite the parents of the school and we just go through questions and discuss certain students and some of the whatever, right? Anyway, one of the questions I get asked a lot is, Why is there an uprise of diagnosis? Why are there more numbers? Growing up in the 90s, only the kids who were hectic had ADHD. The kids who wouldn't sit in the classroom. These were the kids who were on the roof. These were the kids, lighting a fire in the dumpster at lunchtime. The crazy ones. These are the really severe cases that required the diagnosis. Before iPhones, before computers in every room, even before TVs in every room, there was one television to a family and one shared computer. You had magazines, you had to play outside. Your ability to force yourself to concentrate, that muscle was quite strong. Even though if you did have ADHD, I have ADHD, I can concentrate, okay? I teach myself how to concentrate. It's a little bit difficult, but you force yourself to do it and you get better at doing it, okay? That is a conscious effort. When phones with TikTok, Instagram, every single social media, constantly at your fingertips, and these companies use the same algorithms as pokey machines designed to keep you attached to the screen. And the moment you're bored, with a flick of your finger, you can get new information, brand new content. You don't need to concentrate. You don't need to force yourself to concentrate. You can just sit there and constantly have new information coming your way. So I feel like in the 90s, it wasn't as much of a problem because you were kind of forced to adapt. It was only the severe cases that really couldn't adapt. And now, obviously, everything is a spectrum. So there's levels of ADHD as well. But the reason that I've done the research and the reason why there are more frequent diagnoses, this is crazy. I couldn't believe it. It's actually social media. It's not what you think. Social media isn't causing the condition or the comorbidity or the symptoms. They're not causing it. What they're doing is, because so many more people are uploading content like this, they're uploading content about ADHD, about autism, about Tourette's. Every time I upload a Tourette's video on TikTok, it skyrockets with views. Okay? It's a novelty. Therefore, it's breaking down the stigma and spreading awareness. So you've got someone who's got no idea why they behave a certain way, or why their brain is different, or why they can't sit still, why they don't have emotional regulation properly like everybody else. They don't understand the brain fog. They don't get it. Then they're watching someone on the other side of the world that's got 10,000 views, and they're talking about it, and they've recently been diagnosed as an adult. And as a kid, they're like, but that's me. I'm exactly the same. Hey, mum, I think I've got ADHD. What's that? And then you explore it, and then you actually go through the process and get the diagnosis. And now in New South Wales, they've actually changed it where GPs can diagnose and hand out the medication. Whereas that wasn't the case only a few years ago. In fact, I believe that was only this year where New South Wales actually did that and allowed that. So it was actually blocking up the system. All of these, an uprise of children and adults going to the doctors because the information is out there, and they're going, adults are watching social media, seeing other people talk about their symptoms, realizing it's ADHD, and going to the doctors. And because there was a giant traffic jam bottleneck across the board, everyone's like, right, let's make GPs be able to hand it out because it's just too much. How fascinating that social media, TikTok in particular, is the reason why more people are getting diagnosed. I couldn't believe that. When I found that, I was like, that's out of control. But it makes sense. It's awareness, and it's breaking down the stigma because people were embarrassed. I don't want to admit that I've got that. A lot of people are very embarrassed about these things. Very insecure about it. Insecure about the fact that they are different. Remember, everybody's different, which makes them the same. So let's go through some of the symptoms of ADHD. Okay. Here are the core features. ADHD is generally defined by 3 key symptoms. Inattention. This is difficulty focusing, being easily distracted, forgetful, or disorganized. Hyperactivity. Excessive movement, fidgeting, inability to sit still. Impulsivity. Acting without thinking, interrupting others, difficulty waiting. So these are only 3, but one of the big ones is emotional dysregulation. I didn't know that until I tried the medication. I thought I was normal. I thought everybody felt the same way as I do. I thought everybody experiences every emotion in the space of an hour. The moment I started taking meds, I had one emotion all day, one mood all day. I couldn't believe it. I was like, hang on. I'm just in one mood. I usually get ups and downs in 20 minutes. Emotional dysregulation, if you're not aware of what that is. Imagine having your shirt is anger. You're doing the laundry, right? Your shirt's anger. Your socks, fear. Your underwear is joy. And your shorts are, I don't know, regret. Is that a feeling? Okay. Instead of putting your shirt where the shirt goes, you put it where the socks go. And then you put the socks where the shirt go. And then you put the shorts where the jackets go. You're putting them in the wrong area. Therefore, you'll be walking along. Everything's fine externally, but you'll be incredibly grumpy. Or you'll have brain fog and then you'll get really happy. And then you'll all of a sudden sink and get really sad. That's emotional dysregulation. When you let out the wrong emotion at the wrong time. Emotional regulation is when you're letting out the right emotion at the right time. So I didn't realize that until I started taking the meds, and I thought it was fascinating. I couldn't believe it. How I taught myself to concentrate with ADHD, my ADHD brain not being able to sit still, having to get up 20 times, writing one sentence. When I was working on television and I was a reporter for a kids show, my dream, my goal, my North Star, my everything was to become the best television presenter I could possibly be. I wanted a late night talk show like Jimmy Fallon. That was my goal. So every day when I went into work, I would be working towards that. And so if I wanted to write a script, I wanted to write the best script that would align to my vision of being a late night talk show host. Which meant when I was researching a topic that I didn't particularly like, I would force myself to research it and write the script because it reflected me and my ability to progress my career. So there was a very serious thing at stake there. Like there was a giant carrot at the end of the string. So every time I would catch myself drifting off, I'd say, no, this is it, man. Finish that sentence, finish that paragraph. This is gonna help you get to that late night talk show. What I discovered is by forcing myself and just moving the goalpost, I'd say, I'll get to the end of this paragraph and then I can check my phone. I'll get to the end of the next paragraph and then I'll go get a drink. I'll get to the third paragraph and I would just constantly move the goalpost. I found myself getting to an hour, or the first was getting to 10 minutes, then to 20 minutes, then to 30 minutes, then to an hour, then to 2 hours. Then I was able to hyper-focus and not eat, not move, and just constantly research like crazy and write the script. But that was a build-up over time. It took a while, maybe a month, 2 months, 3 months of doing it every single day, forcing myself and the constant reminder of if you get distracted, if you don't spell that word correctly, if you don't finish reading that article, you will fail. And because I had such a severe outcome, I forced myself. I taught myself how to concentrate. I believe everybody can do it because I taught myself how to do it, and I couldn't do it before that. Through school, failed. Anyway, when I was able to hyperfocus and I would research an animal to the nth degree, when it came time to shoot the story and film the story and interview the zookeeper, I knew more than the zookeeper about that animal than the zookeeper did. Because my hyperfocus ability, I would just consume every article, every Wikipedia, watch every YouTube video, you name it. I just immerse myself and absorb myself in that animal. So your ability to hyperfocus is very, very powerful. Right now, I am struggling to learn when to turn it on, when to turn it off. There are days where I wish I could just go flip a switch and be able to hyperfocus. Sometimes I just can't. I couldn't do it yesterday. Today I'm better. Great. The big thing I've learned is you have to just be a bit kind to yourself and appreciate what day it is and just do your best for that day. Like yesterday, I felt like I got hit by a train all day. Brain fog all day. And all I could do was lay down. I couldn't even eat. Like I was exhausted. I was so flat. But I sat at that computer and I wrote those sentences. I put together that PowerPoint slide. I just did my best. It was a horrible 20% effort, but I just had to do my best. Had some naps, forced myself to eat, you name it. Today, 10 times better. Nailed it. Have rehearsed the keynote, put the slides together, absolutely dominated, okay? And if I did that yesterday, it wouldn't have been as good as it is today. As you can tell, there's a lot to unpack when it comes specifically to ADHD and how everybody's brain is different, but we're all the same. We've all got brains and they operate in different ways and neural pathways. One of the fascinating things I've found about neuroelasticity, I believe it's called, is that if you have a giant green sporting oval, like a giant football oval, and it's green, it's got the best groundsman who makes sure it's fertilized, watered, mowed, perfectly manicured. And then you get a car and you drive over it, but you drive over it in the same track every day. You will get tire marks, you will get tire tracks, and there will be dirt over a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever. But if you change the direction of where you're driving and you drive over a fresh patch of grass and you repeat that new track every day, eventually that dirt track will grow back to normal green grass and you would have created a new track on the oval. Our brains operate the same way. So if you have one thought pattern and you think that thought pattern every single day, then that's your thought pattern. But if you actively change your thought pattern and manipulate it to think differently over a long period of time, you'll have a brand new thought pattern. You can literally train your brain how to think. I've been doing a lot of research as well on plants and the theory of if you talk to plants, they grow faster. When I say that on stage, people look at me in amazement and they like have a tear in their eye because of how I share the story. And other people look at me like, BS, mate. There's no way that works. So I decided to research it. Turns out there's no concrete scientific evidence that proves that positive affirmations to plants helps them grow. There are many studies that have shown when you talk to a plant, they grow faster than the plants that you don't. So then it begs the question, what type of plants? Then it begs the question of if you're breathing out carbon dioxide, well, that's what plants eat. Trees breathe in carbon dioxide and spit out oxygen. So you're giving it so much more carbon dioxide. Not only that, the vibrations of your voice, they feel it. Now, plants need animals, they need birds, they need scurrying because that creates a thick, rich environment to thrive in. So if you're constantly giving this plant carbon dioxide and constantly giving this plant vibrations, it's going to shoot up faster and be healthier. Not only that, you're giving it care and attention every day. Therefore, you're spotting if it needs trimming. You're spotting if it needs watering. You're noticing it. So they were the indicators that the scientists have conducted experiments on to prove that if you talk to plants, they grow faster. But then let's look at positive affirmations versus manifesting. So manifesting is the concept of when you're sitting in your room and if you want a Ferrari, you're hoping that the Ferrari turns up at your door. You're sitting there wishing, I want a Ferrari. You're not doing anything about it. No, that doesn't work. But positive affirmations, when you talk about yourself positively every single day, multiple times throughout the day, over a course of 6 months to a year to 10 years, you actually, you actually tell your brain you create those new neural pathways. So if you are saying positive affirmations like you are a great person, you do the right thing, you bring the best out in people, you are blah, 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 whatever your affirmations are, okay? If you constantly say that about yourself, it actually becomes true because your brain creates the neural pathways and you convince yourself that you're like that and you actually lean in towards that. So manifesting versus affirmation. So imagine if instead of sitting in your room wishing you get a Ferrari, you say, I'm going to own a Ferrari every single day. I'm going to buy a Ferrari. 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 You do that constantly. Your brain, okay, because you've rewired it in a certain way to think, your brain unconsciously spots opportunities throughout your day where it can lead towards a Ferrari. So, for example, you might see a Ferrari and you go, oh man, I want one of those. Hey, I'm going to go talk to him. I want to ask where he got it. And then you spark up a conversation, something you never would have done without the positive affirmations of telling yourself that you're confident, telling yourself that you're a good person, building up your confidence versus not doing that. And then you talk to him and find out, oh yeah, man, why don't you come for a drive with me or whatever it might be. Or you spot a business opportunity or you go, you know what? I really want that. Why don't I go talk to the accountant? Unconsciously, you start spotting opportunities that align with your goals. So the concept of sitting in your room wishing for a Ferrari ain't going to work. But actually with conviction, saying you're going to do it, you're going to get one, you deserve one, the universe owes it to you, you are claiming your Ferrari and you are going to make it happen, you're going to work hard, you're going to save the money, you're going to get it. It's not the universe talking back to you, but it's your brain actually spotting opportunities where that can become possible unconsciously. Don't know what that has to do with ADHD, but I found it fascinating. I found it really interesting that, you know what? Let's tie it back to the 5 career paths of someone with ADHD. CEO, entrepreneur, sports star, criminal, drug addict. I'm going to guess that the last 2 didn't have much self-worth, and I'm going to guess that they didn't have positive affirmations or a positive upbringing. Maybe, maybe not, okay? But that's my guess. So imagine if you've got ADHD and you're heading down the last 2 paths. I wonder what would happen if you said positive affirmations about yourself every single day. You stood in a power stance. You had your goals that you were manifesting. And you forced yourself how to hyperfocus. You forced yourself how to concentrate. You understood your values. You understood what you want out of this world. You understood your goals. And you built up your self-worth. You built up your confidence. You built up appreciating and accepting who you are as a person and learning to love it rather than rejecting it. Learning to let go of the trauma from your childhood. Learning to forgive your parents, whatever it might be. Instead of externally looking out and hating someone for whatever they did to you when you were younger, learning how to let go, learning how to forgive, and channeling all of your energy into looking after yourself and procuring a positive future. I reckon they might fall into the first 3 categories. I mean, this is a hypothetical. And I'll finish on this. There's a saying that I like that where the mind goes, the body follows. And I like to say as well, that's true, but where the body goes, the mind follows. So there was a TED Talk that I watched a little while ago, and there was an experiment done with 2 groups of people going for a job interview. One group in a room, they just sat around. They didn't really talk to each other. They were waiting to go into the interview and whatever. The other group were forced to do power stance and power language. A power stance is when you're standing upright, your shoulders are back, it's a firm stance, your legs are solid on the floor, shoulder width apart, you're forcing a smile, you're putting your hands up in your air, you're putting your hands up in the air and you're going, yes, 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 I can do this, I'm great, I'm the best, I'm amazing, I'm going to nail this. For 2 minutes, if you stand like that, it actually releases dopamine in your brain. It releases serotonin, and makes you feel more confident. And if you look at tarantulas, if you look at cobras, if you look at gorillas, what do they have in common? They stand up, they project themselves bigger. They stick their chest out, they puff their chest out, they stand up, they hit their chest, And they found that the group who did the power stance performed much better in the job interview. So, if TikTok is showing people that they're confident in themselves and they're taking the first step of talking about it and sharing it, and that's contagious, then I wonder what the result would be if you started to do that, listening now, watching now. If you started speaking about yourself more positively with positive affirmations in power stance for 5 minutes every day. I wonder what would happen. I use it strategically, whenever I'm feeling a certain way. If I'm ever nervous, which is very, very rare nowadays. But I develop my own techniques to channel that nervous energy into excitable energy to perform at my peak on stage. Learning how to channel that hyperfocus. Yesterday, if I had a gig, if I had a speaking opportunity, I was thinking about it. I would have been able to turn myself on stage. I've done it a million times. When I'm not feeling up to it, when I was drinking, I'd either be hungover from the night before or whatever. And the moment I step on stage, something happens. A switch is flicked and I am on. I'm at my peak, I'm at my best, and for 1 hour, my body goes into its performative mode. And that's just over years of forcing myself how to do it, learning the techniques, and my brain knows what to do and my body follows. So I had to talk about that today. The fact that TikTok is responsible for people getting diagnosed with ADHD. Anyway, I hope you liked this episode. If you did, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks.